steal all side, ride me, baby. I ain't never gonna stop. Come on now, baby. Ride me straight to the top. Yeah, straight to the top.
Should we start this?
Are we recording? Yep. I thought so.
Yeah. Bad ideas, good stories.
Number 34.
That seems right.
Yes, we are catching up.
Hello.
Yes. Hello. Hate.
So, what's the date today? End of May. End of May, been a minute.
Is it the 31st?
Yep.
Yeah, I guess.
Things are changing. Springs are sprunging.
Yes, it's beautiful out. Weather's nice. Finally. We had a little bit of a stint of like near sub-zero. We had some snow. Apparently some people, I forget where they were, just pretty close. I think Swift Current had like significant, like 4 inches of snow. Like they had to shovel their
some dumpage.
Walks. Yeah, in the middle of spring. But you know, climate change is a hoax, and so we're just kidding. I don't want to touch you with
same as it ever
been.
Yep. Yeah, so that's our weather talk.
That's the weather today, which probably won't be accurate by the time this gets released in a week or two. But
right. Yeah. So what else new with you, dude?
Been reading a lot. Been hanging out with the dogs, tattooing a lot, doing a lot of big work, training a lot. You know, It's my 3rd month that the doctor has been giving me my testosterone shots. So I'm really starting to notice changes in my lifestyle right now. I've got more creativity going. My libido's getting back up, energy levels. At the gym, I can go a little longer. I took the big plunge and I bought myself official running shoes for running. Yeah. Less sneakers for sneaking, more running shoes for running.
That's all I've ever used them for was sneaking. It seemed appropriate. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you like? Do you like running, like treadmill running, or what do you do?
No, I don't like running. Yeah. I fucking hate running. To me, yeah, it's legitimate. I was talking with my partner this morning. It is one of my biggest triggers. I've got so much shit floating around from not being able to run now that I carry over from, like, I don't know, what is it, the Canada fitness testing when I was a kid, and I was like this little round boy trying to suck air, chasing all the kids that are actually in shape. And then you know, my teacher's giving me shit because I took walking breaks during the running, and I'm like, fuck, dude, I can't do this shit. And then as I got older, when I was in Canada Games, we were running 12 kilometers a day. Wake up, you run 6 kilometers, you eat breakfast, then you run 6 kilometers and eat supper. And I was good to go for Canada Games. And then I just slipped, you know. I do weight training now, but my lungs need to be worked out. Like, really, I ran for about 10 minutes this morning with my fancy new shoes just to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I coughed for about 20. Yeah. And once I got home, I'm just like, my lungs are not cut out for it. I was wondering maybe I had COVID. I don't know. Like,
yeah, I got COVID. Or
what's going on here? Or I just exercised.
Catch a case of middle age over here?
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, before I went and picked up Russ, I wanted to bust the new skate out. So I stopped at one of the little satellite parks on McCurcher there. And they got like kind of a little bank set up thing so you can kind of pump it. And I had about 20 minutes. And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, that'll be plenty of time. Didn't need it. I did not need 20 minutes, it turned out, to go until I was tired enough where I was like, yeah, I'm good. I hadn't felt so weak and fat in a while, so this was nice. Kind of get me some perspective.
Well, that's just it. You know, what is it? Joseph Campbell is the cave that you fear to enter. It holds the treasure you seek, and I fucking hate running. So I figured that's probably one of those things that I should start investing in. Like, you know, same thing with the fasting thing. You know, going a fast every once in a while, like 24 hours of just going with no food, just water, right? And trying that out, you know. And so I hate those things. So maybe those are things I should play with. And I definitely hate running. Yeah. You know, I like the weight training because I find it fairly easy. It's entertaining and stuff like that, and I get exercise. But the running thing is a next level. So I think that's literally it. It's the next level that I should probably work towards. Right?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
It sucks though, man. You know, I jiggle in places I don't remember jiggling. I chafe on my inner thighs, like...
Yeah, it blows.
Yeah. You could tell I am not a runner. And they were so nice to me at the Brain Sport. That's where I went to get my shoes.
Oh, sure.
They're like, oh, how far do you plan on running? I'm like, Not far. Not far. Less than a kilometer, I'm thinking.
What's the least amount I can tell you that isn't going to be like it's fucking?
I didn't make a kilometer. Just saying that. I'm just like sucking air.
Somewhere.
Well, and that's okay. So I'm not sure. You know C.T. Fletcher at all? He's like.
Oh yeah.
He's a
big
monster,
jack dude, inspirational guy.
Inspirational bodybuilder. I think he was like world champion bicep curls and stuff. He has a saying, and I really like it. It's like, it doesn't matter what weight you pick up, just pick it up and keep picking it up. And sooner or later, it's going to get so light, you just pick up the next one. And so that's kind of how I figure about the running thing. I'll just run until I suck air and I can't do it anymore. And maybe the next time I run, I got, a little bit further and a little bit further until then I can start pacing myself a bit better. It's just like at the gym.
I guess you just got to get nervous, but like taking the dogs with you. I don't know how they are for running.
I will crush that dog.
Yeah.
If I stumble and a Chihuahua or a Jack Russell falls underneath me, it will die.
You trip and fall. I love fun taking my Chihuahua to the trails at the park and running with her because you go through the trees and shit like that, and she'd follow me. And at the time, I could outrun a Chihuahua. You know what I mean? Like long distance, short distance, whatever. Fuck, I'll smoke that little dog. So yeah, it was fun because they got a fucking blast out of it.
Well, yeah, and you end up getting your heart going and your lungs going, and to me, that's more than the actual legs hurting. Other than the thighs chafing. Yeah, it's it's the actual lungs like sucking air and my heart just like holy shit because like I'm used to the other stuff. A buddy of mine in Switzerland, he sold me a trail mountain bike, so I was going to be biking to work and biking home, biking to the gym and stuff, which, didn't really go as hardcore as I thought. And he's always on my case to go trail riding. And I'm like, no, maybe I'll go to the trails really gently on my own to see how bad I suck, and then I'll go with somebody who goes trail riding. Yeah. I don't want to just dive bomb in. And
I think it's kind of like with that kind of shit when you start talking extreme sports levels, like because trail riding on a mountain bike's pretty fucking gnarly,
I don't know, but yeah, probably. I'm guessing.
Like trails, like not just like walking past, but I think in that kind of shit, you have to kind of like live on that piece of equipment for a little while before you start doing that stuff. Like I'm just picturing like skateboards and shit. Like the first thing you do isn't go and drop it in a fucking bowl, and like that's what everybody's doing. It's like no, figure out how to push back and forth to school and work and whatever you're doing and get it so it feels like an appendage, and then you get to try those things.
Exactly. Bike to school, go down some alleys, go over a few curbs, go through some parks, and then maybe go down a walking trail.
If you've never done it, you don't get to miss any steps just because you're 45.
No,
right?
Yeah, I got this. I got this.
Yeah, it's like nah, I've seen how it's done enough, and I don't really need to have had the lifetime experience doing it. I can just fucking figure it out, right?
Right. Whoever gets injured doing that.
Oh, dude, that was like I had so many experiences like that doing snowboard lessons where you get adults that were like going with their kids and stuff, and they're like, "Wow, the kids can do it, and it can't be that hard, And they'd be like, kind of athletic people, and they're not going to get held back, and then there's a lot of technique involved in it they didn't realize, and it wouldn't make sense, and you see some frustrated motherfuckers with that kind of thing.
Okay, I've actually wanted to ask a few of my friends about that because I like skateboarding. I grew up skateboarding since I was like in grade fucking 9, right? But I stopped doing tricks a long time ago. I like to carve, and I've played with some longboard stuff and carving along, and I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And I ride with my daughter roller skating, and I've got a camera, and I can imagine I can keep up with her, and I can stay on the board while
That's
filming
fucking
her.
Awesome.
It makes me wonder how transferable that is to snowboarding. Like the carving, and if you can carve on a longboard or a short deck, can you get by initially on snowboarding, or is it a different animal?
Well, you can kind of get by, and like some people, and if you're already comfortable with that kind of like being sideways on a board sort of shit, you already can have like some balance and kind of figure out how it works. But when you turn, especially doing like a kick turn on a skateboard, you put more weight on your back foot, right? And you kind of lift that front foot to do it. You got to do the opposite on a snowboard. You got to put weight heavy on your front foot. And so it's
so it'd be like turning on a motorcycle, leaning into it to go the opposite way.
It's much more like that. Yeah, okay. Absolutely. And so then that throws people because they're like, well, no, I should just be able to lean back and kind of turn, and it's like.
And I'm used to switching my stance and being able to shift forward and adjust on the board.
Well, and that is more how you control your speed than on a. Oh yeah, moving your feet around. You mean?
Yes, exactly. Being able to push and then slide and move on a deck on skateboard, but you can't do that on a snowboard.
No, right? You're locking it in.
Yeah, I've never done it.
You've never snowboarded at all?
No, I think well, at the school park legitimately by my elementary school, I think I was in grade 9. One of my friends like, try this out, and I ate it, and I'm like, yeah, that's me trying that.
That was legit my first experience too. It was like, hey, we're gonna go, and I pictured in my head for months like how awesome it was gonna be and how good I was gonna be at it, and then I got on it, and I was like, even before our lesson started, because we were with our school, I was like, I'm just gonna go for a little rip down this little hill here, and like ate shit so bad. Tailbone, just like 2 weeks of agony trying to sit, you know, like it was the worst day. I didn't learn anything. I was terrible. Like
You learned it hurts to fall.
Years of being terrible. And, but then, yeah, once it clicks, and again, if you get like proper instruction, well, not to say I didn't get proper instruction at the beginning. I wasn't a good student at the beginning.
Okay,
if you get proper instruction and a good student, you don't go through all that. You know, there's a day of that maybe, and then you kind of get it and it clicks, and you can kind of build off the things you have, you know. And it just took me several years to do that. But then like once, like the first time you can really like smoothly put two turns together, going like heel side to toe side, and feel comfortable with it, it's just like, holy fuck, I can do this, and then I can do it every single time I want to now forever, and that's the best. It's just the best.
Yeah, I think I need to, me personally, and well, probably my family, we need to invest in more winter hobbies.
Yeah,
especially
if you're gonna be stuck here.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're also flat, you know, but
Yeah.
it would be cool to, you know, be able to get some sleds, or, you know, even a truck, drag somebody behind on, you know, whatever.
It's
right?
fun, absolutely.
Yeah, I think we need to do that stuff.
Well,
because-
and there's actually a fairly decent amount of little ski hills in the province too to keep a guy interested.
Yeah,
that
I've
terribly
heard.
far drives.
Well, how far is Lake Louise or Table?
So Table Mountain is only, you know, the other side of North Battleford, where Lake Louise is actually in the edge of British Columbia there.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Okay, because
yeah.
these are the big ones that my friends go to.
Yes,
when
Table
they're
would be like the local one that's just, you know, nearby, under 500 feet, you know what I mean? Like,
Is Blackstaff shut down now?
yes, yeah, actually has been for just about 20 years now.
What? No.
Blackstrap, yeah, man. It was 03 or 04, I think, was the last year it was open.
Oh, I
Because
didn't
the
know
second
that.
last season they were open, I worked there, and that was in 01 or 02. And then they were open one more season after that with different management, and then they shut down. Or maybe
What are
it was
they doing with that hill now?
Nothing. Nothing was ever done. And, a big portion.
Is there like
of
an
that was-
abandoned chalet out there?
It burned down. Oh. somebody fucking burned it.
It was
down.
abandoned,
Yeah,
and then-
it was abandoned. Somebody burned it down, and I mean, it still belonged to whoever belonged to out there, and it was actually a really nice little chalet. And I think the lifts are still out there. I think the chairs and everything are off them. But that was part of the reason why I didn't stay running, was because when the new management came in, they were also like, okay, well, it turns you have to update all this infrastructure. Like the chairs hadn't been updated since they were put in the 70s.
So they're ancient.
Yeah, man, and they were rickety as shit too, you know. So it needed a bunch of fucking work, and it would have paid off if somebody would have invested in it to having a ski thing that's a half hour out of the city. You don't not make money doing that. Even if it sucks, there's always going to be people there.
Well, yeah, half hour, 25-minute drive, and you can go down the hill a few
Yes.
times. That's pretty
well,
easy.
and like
compared to-
then proof's in the pudding that Diefenbaker Park, busy as all fuck all winter, and it's tiny. Like it's the bunny hill size of most hills. And people are out there nonstop because it's convenient, and you can fucking just go do it.
And kids can learn, and
Fucking
like
is.
they do have the bunny hill, so you know you
Yep.
can even do it with toboggans and shit like that if you want to be crazy. But yeah,
Yeah, winter activities, they are fun.
yeah. Now,
If you-
now
if
that
you lean
spring
into
is
them.
here and summer's here,
Well, and
we're going
legit,
to talk
dude,
about what we
legit, dude. Like one afternoon, if I took you out for a fucking lesson, I'd have you like comfortable on a board, where you're like,
That's
I can do
cool.
this.
I should keep that in mind. I got a few people that I know that can do that, you know, but yeah, it's just a matter of finding the time and the energy and the space to get
I'll
out
force
there.
you. And you know what? Corey and I actually a couple times went out to Wapiti on the same weekends. Like he took his family, and I took where I was with or whatever, and we taught his kid how to ski. You know, because I'm ski instructor also, so I would teach his kid how to ski while we were both on boards and got him ripping around out there. And so if the kid wants to learn some stuff too, you know, like it's
Yeah.
fun. I fucking love doing it.
Yeah, my one buddy, I didn't go, this is a funny story. My daughter's class was going out to, I think it was Table Mountain, and they were going to learn skiing or snowboarding, whichever one they wanted, right? And my one buddy, Sean, he's an NA guy, he's like, man, I'm going to go and I'm going to show your kid. And I'm like, I don't think they allow the average 40-year-old man to just roll out and hang out with a bunch of 13-year-old girls on a ski
Hey, children,
hill.
follow me.
And he did. He showed up because I didn't chaperone. I'm like, why the fuck would I go? I can't ski. I can't snowboard. But he's like, I'm going. So he texted her. He's like, I'm coming out. And she met, and all the teachers were laughing because he had a group of these kids doing jumps. And like, yeah, he was really coaching them all. And
awesome.
and he's like, well, there was a couple little asshole kids. But, you know, but I think he would be a really good teacher. Some people just have that personality for working with
sure.
kids, you know,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter if it's snowboarding, skateboarding, martial arts, whatever, you know, they just got that energy and that enthusiasm that kids respond to.
It's actually funny. I was walking the dogs yesterday, and there was a family in the one alley, like trying to get the kids, teaching them how to ride bikes, and the dad was doing something else. And the one older boy was trying to get the younger boy to go, and he was hanging onto his handlebars while he's trying to push him. And I'm like, it's not going to work, bud. You know, so I had to kind of like, look, you want to do this, and look, you got to stop looking right in front of your bike, bud. You want to look down the alley because you're driving down the alley, right? You know, so I walked him through it, and then took off, and to come back around, and the kids cruising back down the other way, so we're giving them thumbs up, and it was a real sweet little experience. I felt like a part of a community.
I visualized the comedy skit where the guy walks in, face palms the dad out of the way. Okay, I'm going to show you what to do.
Well, actually, it was funny. The one afternoon we were hanging out in the alley when we used to have the garage for the club, and these two little kids come cruising by, and I mean, like, they're sketched out because it looks like these
bunch of tattooed bikers,
gnarly looking dickheads with motorcycles hanging out in an alley. It definitely smells like piss. And so these kids are trying to get by as quick as they can. And the one little guy, as soon as I heard like the pedals move, I was like, oh, his chain jumped off. Like, I heard it, you know? And he's kind of sitting there and he's fucking around with it, and he can't get it, and he's kind of panicking. So he goes to get off his bike and start pushing it because he doesn't want to be broke down right in front of us, eh? So I went over and I'm like, hey man, let me show you how to put that back on. So I just showed him how to like run it backwards and hook his shit back up and get going again. I was like, this happens to me all the time. And he's like, oh, thanks, mister, you know? And he fucks off, and he's sitting there and we're like, what the fuck? How'd you even know how to do that? I'm like, they're like, well, you thought you were going to give that kid shit or something. You just walked over there, knew exactly what was wrong with his bike, just fixed it. Hey, yeah. I was like, you think I'm some sort of asshole? But I guess so.
Well, you know, it's funny because that kid was probably scared shitless that first he embarrassed himself in front of all these big, scary, gnarly dudes, tattooed and whatnot. And then second, that they might laugh at him or make fun of him or be mean or violent. You know, kids, they're not rational.
They're scared of fucking everything.
Yeah, man. Exactly. So if somebody came up and was cool and helped him out, that just changed his worldview, you know, because those guys that look like that aren't all what I thought they were. And that's a pretty important one where I've seen that a couple times. I read one of the rocker books I have about the mods and the rocker. It was written by this guy. He's like, the first rocker I ever saw in England was like heavily leathered motorcycle, what is it called? Cafe racer riding kind of guys. Mm-hmm. He's like, these guys were bad news. You stay away from them. They're motorcycle dudes. And he was in his dad's car, and they're in London, and this big like leathered rocker guy pulls up right behind him, and he's looking out the window at this guy, and the guy winks at him and gives him a thumbs up, and then he's like, from that moment on, they were the coolest guys ever.
You know what's fucking funny, man? I know lots of people that have similar stories of like, that's why they got into bikes. Like their parents didn't, they didn't really know anybody. But like when they were a kid, a bunch of cool bikes came through town one time and they're like, holy fuck, what's that? And then they're just hooked, hey? Or like somebody does something cool like that and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's a thing I need to know about. That's fucking cool.
See, I had a next door neighbor when I was like little. Like my dad came home with like a big panther tattoo on his arm when I was like 8. But even before that, our next door neighbor was ex-military, I think from the States. And he had a huge eagle tattooed across his chest. And he'd be like mowing the lawn with no shirt on. I'm just like, fuck, that guy's crazy. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, you want an iced tea? And he would go get iced tea and like give me and my brother iced tea. And I'm like, this guy's pretty cool, right? So in my environment, tattoos were just part of, you know, what old cool men did, right?
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. Yeah,
and so I'm like,
old cool guys had tattoos. That's
I want to be an old cool guy someday.
Yeah, they usually had motorcycles. They were kind of cool. Probably stunk like BO and booze, but
little bit.
That's what they do.
Yeah, I'm realizing I'm going to be a pretty weird Santa-looking motherfucker when in a few years. Gray's coming in. I'm all covered in tattoos. The belly,
you know what's in.
Yeah, exactly. Daddy Santa.
Actually, speaking of Daddy Santa, I seen some fucking photos of Ricky Martin recently that made me conflicted a little bit.
Really?
He was like, somebody was like, man, Ricky Martin's looking even hotter as an old man, and he had like a beard and shit, but he was wearing like half a corset. I was like, what am I looking at here? What happened?
Yes. We're
Jesus Christ.
living in interesting times.
Ricardo.
Where the binary is being erased. I don't want to get into it, but let me tell you.
Yeah. Well, whatever. I'm having more boners, so I mean.
Yeah, well, fucking A. Whatever works, right?
Yeah, right.
Embrace your boner shall lead you to chaos. Embrace it.
It'll set you free. Most occasions. Oh, shit. What else do I know that's good, my friend?
Not much.
Fat fuck all.
Well, you know,
our jam spot burned down. Did we talk about that last time?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I did hear that.
Well, I guess
that's Mike's place, right?
Yeah, ours didn't burn down, but everything beside it burnt right to the fucking ground, and then it kind of just melted a bit of the side of ours, but enough that the building's fucked and we're out, and so we haven't had a jam space for a hot minute here. And what was funny was I was just like how kind of shitty everything in general has been for the last couple of years, you know, plague-wise and in my personal life. It was like jam space burned down was almost not even a blip on my radar. I forgot to tell people about it. You're like, anything interesting happened? I'm like, I don't think so. Oh yeah, you remember that fucking fire on Avenue B? They're like, yeah, everybody in town knows about it. It was right downtown. Well, it was our jam spot, you know? Like, oh, fuck, really?
So yeah, I guess Mike was able to salvage a lot of his recording equipment. It's just
I think most of it, yeah. I don't think there was too many
smoke damage,
too many
or anything
losses,
like that.
and I think most of it's just smell. It's
Yeah,
not,
yeah.
It's not like really affecting the performance. I know some of our stuff had a bit of a hickory smoke to it, but
we're supposed to be punkers.
It's
Like, you know,
fuck it,
if
right?
that's
It's
the
gonna smell
worst
like-
you got.
it's no worse than Rawless. That's all I'm gonna say. There's no worse than Chris Rawless.
But yeah. So what's he gonna do? Like, it makes me wonder about that.
He's already moving on to another spot.
So
Yeah.
the building, the landlord would get insurance, but then it makes me wonder about if a tenant signs on to a lease for a period of time. Because I think he had like a 5-year lease on that
Sure.
location. So if the tenant, if he gets that lease paid out because he doesn't have access to that place and he can go somewhere else, or
I would assume he's out of it. And, the only thing kind of sketchy is fucking insurance wise, because none of the building insurance would cover any of our stuff. So it's something we should probably take into account the next time, because I never think of anything burning down, and then it did, and it was like, holy fuck, we really dodged a bullet there, because we just might not have a band anymore if we had to replace everybody's equipment. It'd be a hot minute, man.
Well,
it's tough enough keeping rent for a jam space going, let alone fucking. And by the way, let's just replace tens of thousands of dollars worth of equipment at the same time.
well, my tattoo shop flooded in the basement. We had like 4 inches of, I'm not sure if it was sewage water, but either way, it was gray water coming back from mud at least, possibly more.
Yeah.
And
I could tell myself it was mud.
I put on my rubbers and I went down there, and we were looking around. But luckily, about 8 years ago, we had a similar thing happen. So we decided to not put anything really valuable on the floor.
Yeah,
so
good
everything was up in filing cabinets and on shelves. So we didn't really lose much, but it knocked us out for a couple days. And it's the landlord's responsibility to change out the flooring, because it's a permanent structure as opposed to an improvement that we had done, right?
Oh, sure.
So yeah, for a period of time, we've got all of our basement supplies all stacked around and tucked under everything in our waiting room. It looks pretty chaotic in there, but fuck it, it's COVID, you know. Might as well be tattooing out of a van.
Sign up Friday. Hey, it's COVID. Suck my dick.
That's kind of it. It's COVID. Shit happens,
you
you
got
know.
an
It's
issue with this?
COVID.
There's a plague. Fuck yourself.
Right? Yeah. Buying my running shoes, I had to wait to get let in. They had me sit at least 6 feet away. I had to sit down. They asked me questions, and then I had to do my little walk to show them where my foot fucking fell. And then they went and, get this, then they went and got 3 pairs of running shoes that I could pick from. Which one of these do you like? And this is what we think would be good for you. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll take these guys. They didn't even tell me how much they were, you know.
You're in a cult now, eh?
A little bit, yeah.
You didn't even know. They can tell us a few of your secrets.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
where do my feet go?
Send us some nudes, and we will file these.
Yeah,
and if you
right.
ever turn against Brain Sport, we will release them.
And don't you dare ask about where the owner's wife is. Mm-hmm. Scientology, look into it. His wife's been missing for fucking years.
Oh, seriously? Is that
yeah.
Hubbard?
The dude that the dude that's running Scientology now, not L. Ron
okay.
Hubbard's. Because I believe L. Ron's been dead for years. But the guy who's running it now, his wife fucking supposedly disappeared years ago. There's been more than a few documentaries about it, I guess. But,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I remember hearing recently there's a few celebrities involved with this cult called NXIVM. Have you heard about this?
Oh, is that the one where the guy was branding women and
Yeah.
shit? And wasn't there a woman who was kind of? I guess you probably know more about the night.
Well, okay, my understanding, and that's just it. It's just cursory. It's so there was this self-help organization called NXIVM. It's like NXV. I don't know. Yeah, instead of the U, they have a V. NXIVM, NXIVM, or something like that.
I've seen it. Yeah, it looks like it's Cyrillic or whatever.
Yeah, so it's kind of like culty, and these people self-help. It started getting deeper and deeper levels into the self-help to like this thing which was a dom sub, and it was supposed to be like for women only. Mentor was the dom, and the sub was like the mentee or the young lady that wanted to be mentored. But what they left out was, so you're in the self-help group, you're getting really into the self-help program, you're doing your work, you're doing your meditation, whatever it is, and then suddenly one of like the older women would approach the younger women saying, do you want to go to the next level and join our DS program? And they're like, yeah, sure, what's it involved? Well, it's just next level ego work, and I tell you things to do and you just do them. I'm your dom and you're my sub, but it's based off of BDSM kind of like formality, right? But nobody mentioned at the initial level that all of the dom was this cult leader guy, the guy that headed up this NXIVM thing. And that eventually their ego work would be BDSM sex games. And to the point where this guy was like basically brainwashing women into getting like their inner thighs branded with his initials, with a logo that is his initials. And there was like sex stuff going on where he's like, you need to come and like, as part of your ego work, I know you don't even want to do this, but that's just your ego talking. You have to go through this ritual of like,
holy fuck.
Yeah. So he got busted. He got like a whole bunch of time. And then there was some celebrity women that were also on board. I forget their names, but celebrity women that were on board that were very well known that were like, come to NXIVM. And they were part of the recruitment. They got charged with like procuring like human trafficking and kidnapping and sexual
That's
assault.
what that is, folks.
Yeah.
Hey, human trafficking is not always people in fucking crates on boats. You know, you're scrooching them around and getting them away from their families and.
Well, it's also a strange
coercing
thing
them.
because in the BDSM community, all of this stuff is common, right? Like somebody tells somebody to do something, okay, yeah, sure, but everybody's agreeing to it, you know. And these people were basically
and you don't have to like
manipulate
sign your house over to them or anything, whatever other bullshit's going on with it, right? So here's part of my whole BDSM scene. I like to be whipped. I like to punch people, and I like it if you sign all of your assets over to me at the beginning of this. It's that kind of control I need to have over someone.
You're a financial submissive.
Can we get your grandmother's house as well? How do we get the whole block? Do you know anybody who lives here?
Well, there is a movement within the kink scene, which is financial domination, right?
Fucking rights. Why wouldn't there?
Yeah,
of course.
It's called
I said it out loud, didn't I? Why wouldn't it exist?
It's called findom, and like it depends. The people that are more into traditional play kind of they look with a bit of a squinty eye, you know, like look sideways at findoms, like I'm a dominant, but I just want you to give me money. Are you really?
That seems like a different level of manipulation that's not necessarily agreed to.
Yeah, and is it kink? Well, no, these guys.
I want somebody to make me bankrupt.
Well, that's just
I want
it.
someone to embezzle all my savings.
If you can imagine a personality that really is a masochistic personality and he has a lot of extra income or doesn't, and he's got a high level credit card, being forced to sit while shopping and saying, oh, you like this? It's pretty expensive, but I'm buying it. Give me your card. Yeah. And I can't afford that, or oh, that's so much money. That's kind of like that emotional, psychological play. If it's legitimate and it's not just some fucking 20-year-old ditz that can't make it on OnlyFans, it's like, I'm a findom, you know, give me your money and I'll send you pictures of my pussy. Like, what the fuck? That's not dominance. That's just,
in your opinion,
No, it's just fucking prostitution, man. It's just prostitution.
Yeah, no, for sure, right?
Yeah, so.
Yeah, you're just paying for pics. Though it's interesting that came up because I don't know if you follow much of like the MMA news at all.
No, not so much. So fill me in.
What's been kind of going on and been kind of like everybody's been talking about a little bit has been Diego Sanchez, who I don't know if you're familiar with him as an MMA
I know
fighter.
the name. That's about it.
He won like the first Ultimate Fighter. He's been fighting in the UFC for like 15 or 16 fucking years now. Like he's kind of a legend and a weirdo. Like always, he was weird on the Ultimate Fighter, and he was always kind of out there, you know, and known for a weirdo, but could really fucking scrap. Well, in the last couple years, he'd be, I think he's 30, maybe he's 39, he's 38, 39, something like that. I think it was 36, he ends up getting a divorce from his wife, and it's not really clear what was happening exactly, how it all came about, but this guy, this Joshua Fabia, kind of inserts himself into his life, and he's this guy, he runs this school of self-awareness, he calls it.
Oh.
You know, so he's one of these guys, right? I teach movement, I teach fluidity.
Well, don't get me wrong, I'm a cult leader. Yeah, you know, I get
right?
it. I get it.
So this guy, that's what this guy is, right from the hop, right? But he kind of sees Diego, and people who've trained with this Sanchez in the past, because he used to train at Jackson Winklejohn, which is like one of the premier MMA camps in the country. Like it's Holly Holm, John Jones, fucking pick George St. Pierre before he was at TriStar. All these monsters trained out of Jackson Wink in New Mexico, and Diego was there for years as well. Well, then he kind of, not necessarily out of the blue, but in relatively quick succession, like shit cans his whole team, and has just this guy, this Josh,
wellness coach,
this awareness coach as his coach for everything. He's his nutritionist, he's his striking coach, he's his grappling coach. He has video of himself doing like Krav Maga-esque moves and like kind of some Il Strismo sort of shit with some Southern American forces. Like he went with someone who was kind of a guru or some sort to train some military guys. So he would say that was his military training. He's like, oh, you know, I've had military training.
Yeah, that happens lots in the martial arts community.
And it's a guy who never served in the military, but one time worked with some military guys doing a weekend seminar.
And that's on his that's a feather in his cap from that point on.
And it wasn't his seminar. He's a hanger on who's with them, you know. And the guy is comically small. He's 5'1" or 5'2", like he's like Prince tiny. No, I'm just saying. It's, you know what I mean? It's also this weird the thing that happens when you see
Prince
him.
can
and you're
ball.
Like, yeah. I don't doubt it. I'm just saying he's also a tiny man, so it seems even funnier that he's like, trying to claim to be this thing.
Yeah.
And then like these other MMA fighters like Donald Cerrone are telling stories about guys they train with, like whooping this guy's ass in the bar and shit, like because he's talking about this death punch he's got, and then he's fucking rights, man, and he's going to these committees before the fights because he kind of fucked up Diego Sanchez's career. Like he was with him, I think, for maybe his last 3 fights or whatever it was, cornering him, his only corner man. And Diego didn't have like fantastic outings, but he kept trying to say that there was other things fucking with him. He was trying to say that, the athletic committee in Nevada, they told him to throw the fight. Get this Michael Chiesa, and everybody's like, "What the fuck are you talking about, dude?" Well, he says, "Well, this is what they said. They came in and they said, like, Diego, you're not going to do anything that would be unsportsmanlike. Like, you're not going to go out there and try and hurt this guy, are you, Diego? You're not going to try and like really do damage to this guy, Diego, are you?" He's like, "What does that mean?" And they're like, "What the fuck?" But again, this is somebody who's a manipulator, so he's taking it out of context. They did ask him these questions, but that was because at the time, this Josh Fabia was telling them that he taught Diego a choke that was so dangerous. It was so dangerous that if the referee saw it starting to be applied, he needed to stop the fight, because if it continued and he didn't recognize what was happening, Diego was going to kill this man.
Ooh.
It's a death choke.
That's a pretty dangerous
You
choke.
see it starting, you have to stop the fight. So that's what he tells this professional athletic gaming commission.
If you sign up for his class, can you learn the death choke?
Well, no, because we have to get behind the paywall on his website, obviously,
okay,
right?
okay.
And he has a very small select group right now of people that he seems to manipulate, and so these stories keep coming out more of what's been happening behind the scenes with him and this guy in the last couple of years. So like this guy had power of attorney over Sanchez's finances, from what I understand, because he had to file a fucking restraining order against him and get his power of attorney back over his own shit. So this guy had convinced this fighter that he should give him power of attorney, and he'd been taking him out to his property after his wife had kicked him out and they got divorced or whatever, and he's living in a small apartment. He's taking him out to his property in New Mexico, and they're doing mushrooms and sleeping in teepees together naked and doing some getting him to naked leg wrestle other guys in a creek, and you're all going like, I don't know why everybody's naked so much. I've never seen so much MMA training involved with no pants on at all.
Yeah.
And so it's all very odd, and he's like, and it was all grooming. You know what I mean? When you start seeing it afterwards, you're like, oh, this guy's a cult leader grooming these men around him, and getting, because what eventually how they had a falling out was because Diego's been defending this guy. Been like, no, you guys don't understand it. He's just helped me. He's a spiritual guy. He was there for me when nobody else was.
He's my daddy.
And that's what these guys do, right? They manipulate, right? Well, it gets to a point where they've got and then their OnlyFans page comes up. And everybody's like, well, what do you mean OnlyFans page? And he's like, well, yeah, we've got an OnlyFans page. We just talk training and shit. Oh, sorry, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So his last fight in the UFC, he was supposed to fight Cowboy Cerrone. But the week before, they're having the fighters meeting, and this guy comes into the fighters meeting and starts talking all this crazy shit. And he starts talking about Diego having CTE, like brain damage from fucking fighting, and all this kind of shit, and how he wants his medical records, and he's had this beef with the UFC that he can't get his medical records, and why wouldn't they give them to him? It all starts to feel like something where he's trying to lay a groundwork so that he can file a lawsuit against them and say, well, look, you gave him brain damage and now he can't perform and he can't continue to do what he wants to. Whereas with combat sports, it's like, well, you think you're starting to get brain damage? Okay, well, you're not a fighter anymore then. There's no continuation of your career after somebody somewhere said you're getting brain damage and you can't get a commission to
You don't think that there's
anymore.
anybody that might be able to cover that up or to try and minimize the findings?
You could, absolutely, right? You could continue, but that's probably not legal and definitely not above board, right? There will be leagues somewhere that'll still have, if say
I
Diego
doubt
did have brain
UFC
damage,
would be that
there's
level.
still somebody somewhere that's going to pay that guy to fight, right?
Yeah.
So, but anyways, that's really seemed like that's what this guy's angle was, that he was going to try and, have a lawsuit with the UFC and trying to use this, and they could smell this shit coming a mile away. When he's phoning around trying to get the medical records, they're like, nah, you don't need any of this. And like his wife has this stuff and his lawyers have this stuff. Like you personally don't need to be part of any of this.
So yeah, it was quite obvious that he was playing some game or some
anybody
angle.
that was meeting them was like, oh, that dude's manipulating Diego. That's crazy. How does he not see it, right? So eventually, he's got this fight coming up the week of. The UFC just cuts him. It's just like, look, we're going to pay you even your to win money, and you're done with us. Like that's the end of your career with us.
He didn't fight.
It didn't fight. Got his money, And this Fabia, he acted like it was kind of a victory for them, Like he's like, well, it's the smartest win for us ever. He got his win money, and he never had to throw a punch. Never had to take a punch. That's a win for us. And now we can go and Diego, we can go and do what he wants with his career.
Naked
without
leg
these guys.
wrestling.
Well, okay, so then right away,
On
nobody else
peyote.
wants to touch him because this is his management now, and the UFC just cut him because he thinks, according to his management, that he might have brain damage. Guess who's not getting signed by anybody, right? So he totally fucked this guy's swan song of a fight that he could have with another great classic fighter. They were going to go out and have a really good scrap, and it could have been like a really great going out moment for Diego to the UFC. You know, put your gloves in the middle of the fucking thing and leave, and cool. Never got that. Right, so he's taking that from him. All this fucking bullshit. So eventually, he gets to a point where he's doing these OnlyFans videos and doing shit like it's just train. Like he would make it look like it's like, hey, check out that tight ass, was like how one would be captioned. But then it's just training videos. But he would be getting the guy running the camera to like focus in on Diego while he's bent over, and then he would be Diego doesn't know this is happening. He doesn't know he might know it's being videotaped, but he doesn't know somebody's zooming in on his asshole while he's doing this. And then the guy's making him do bends and stretches and stuff that keep spreading his legs and like making him bend over for the camera like he's unaware. And I'm like, if this is a gentleman and a young lady in the same situation, this is the creepiest fucking thing you've ever seen. No, sweetie, just move to this side of the ring. Yeah, bend this way. No, that's fine. You got the shot, Ben? You got it? Good. No, keep bending over this way. I was saying bend, not bend. Don't worry. Anyways, you know, like, that's what he's doing with this fucking
But you don't think
guy.
this Diego is down with it?
No, he had no fucking idea because that's what broke it, was when this came back to him. They're like, hey, dude, do you know what's happening on this fucking OnlyFans page? Do you know how he's advertising this? And then there was kind of a break, and I haven't totally seen what exactly happened, but now he's got a restraining order against him. And
I don't like you as a manager anymore.
It was just wild seeing this all unfold over the last few weeks in real time. Like this is
recent.
Yes, like it's still developing today, probably.
Jesus.
So it was wild seeing it because it's like you're seeing someone be groomed into a cult, how they would do it. You're seeing all the behind the scenes stuff because these guys keep releasing little videos and snippets onto Instagram or whatever to be like, oh, we were just on the phone with the UFC and this is what they said. And, you know, like always trying to make their own little fucking storyline.
Well, that's just it. And they're going to get advertising with the same community that's like the Joe Rogan community.
Everybody's talking about it right now, and for all the wrong reasons, right?
So, well, and that's just it. Even that bad publicity is publicity, right? So that guy is going to get people signing up. He's going to probably be representing people and having people sign up to his lifestyle program or whatever else, right?
Yeah, and he'll trash Diego. Like, he's already started, so he's already been in interviews where he's telling him, he's like, well, I had to live with them because I was sponsoring him, and you guys didn't know that he was addicted to drugs and alcohol and that he had abuse issues and that he had to listen. It's like, holy fuck, buddy, if you were actually his sponsor, you're the biggest piece of shit in the universe.
You're throwing him under the bus.
You just came out here and then we're like, oh yeah, and here's all the secrets he has that you guys didn't know, which explains why he is the way he is. And I'm not a piece of shit. I'm helping him. I've been helping him this whole time by looking after his money and ruining his career. It's
That's
fucking
crazy,
wild.
man.
And again, you get to see stuff like that in the rearview mirror and go, oh, well, that's how that kind of developed. But seeing as it was happening, and I'm like, yeah, it's right here. He's doing it right now, you know? Fucking wild.
Well, me being into the weird shit that I am and the books that I am, I'm pretty familiar with the whole like cult grooming like system, right? Apparently it started, a lot of that cult brainwashing grooming started with the old man on the mountain, the assassins, the Hashashin, right? Where he would take young men, give them a ton of drugs, pass them out, and then they would wake up in this paradise with all these women and wild animals and whatever fruits and like flowers, and they're like, where the fuck am I? They'd be getting laid and treated like gold, and then they would be drugged again, and they wake up with the old man, the cult leader, and he's like, you want to go back there? You work for me. You train to be an assassin, and when you die, you go back to paradise. So he's like brainwashing these guys. And then apparently the rumors that the Crusaders met some of the assassin or the Hashashin, and they brought that basic training model of breaking down a person and rebuilding them in your form to the military training in Europe, right? Then that got passed over. So all of this stuff is on the table. And two people like the British occultist Aleister Crowley, everybody knows about Aleister Crowley to some degree, and Charles Manson played the same games where they would use drugs, especially psychedelics, because it opens up those neural pathways and opens up different channels to different parts of your brain, and play the ego game. We have to kill your ego by I talk about it all the time, going to the cave cave that you don't want to enter.
Yeah.
Well, they're like, well, what you really need to do is have sex with a man. This is another thing that happens in the Buddhist monasteries all the time. The old predatory fucking, gurus that are like, oh no, you need to have sex with me in order to get past your ego boundaries. The guy's like, but I'm not gay. That's your ego boundary. We need to break through, man.
Right.
And Manson did it all the time, and so did Aleister Crowley. He'd get people all fucked up, say, we're doing ceremony to meet your real self past the binary. Now suck my dick.
Yeah, right.
And they're all fucked up on drugs, and then they wake up, oh my God, what happened? Oh no, your guilt is just your ego fucking with you.
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, cool. Yeah, well, maybe not. Maybe
and those bumps will go down with some cream.
Right,
also,
yeah. Well, maybe your sexuality is just an ego boundary. Maybe. Or maybe that's just who you are, and you should have a right to be that without some fucker fucking with your brain.
Yeah,
so
putting you on drugs and taking you out to the fucking wilderness.
Naked fucking leg wrestling, right?
And that's exactly what this guy was doing, getting him on mushrooms and peyote and shit, and going out into the desert and spending time under the stars.
Yeah.
And,
and then when they're fucking balls deep in the trip, it's like, you ever blow a guy?
Yeah.
No? Okay.
Yeah.
That's all it takes. And give me access to your finances when you're fucking right out there. Wouldn't doubt me that the guy takes a fake dose or a half dose or a microdose while he gives the other guy a hero dose and just manipulates him through that entire fucking trip.
Yup. Well, and what's crazy is you would see it in interviews with Diego too, where he'd be doing these like Zoom or Skype interviews or whatever, and you could tell this motherfucker's just off camera. Because he'd start talking about something, and it was like he was trying to remember what he was supposed to say. You know what I mean? Without direct coaching, but that's how this fucking psychological grooming works. I know I'm not supposed to talk about him. I'm not supposed to reference him because I got to make this seem like it's my fucking idea. I know I have to do that, right? So you'd be looking off screen at this fucking guy, and you could hear doors open and close in the background. Yeah, man.
Sign language and holding cards
video.
Up. Yeah, right. There's this Mason named Manly P. Hall, and I think in 1929 he wrote a book, or I'm not sure. 1920s he wrote a book called "The Secret Teachings of All Ages." And it's funny, I found the meme that quoted one of my favorite lines out of that book, and essentially he sums it up that what is it? There's abundant evidence that in the many forms of modern thought, especially in the so-called prosperity psychology, willpower building, metaphysics, and systems of high-pressure salesmanship, the principles of black magic have merely passed through a metamorphosis, and although the name is changed, the nature remains the same. And in his book, he talks about the principles of meditation, of hypnosis, of mind control, altered state inducing psychology, being able to manipulate your reality. And you're playing with, throughout the ages, these are principles of what they would call magic or shamanism and stuff like that. But you can reprogram people's fucking brains. I learned about it in the hypnosis classes, right? And so you get people dosed up on psychedelics, and then you start playing with them, or you get them glued to a screen, and you start advertising to them. That's basically what they're talking about. You're manipulating people's consciousness for your profit or for your gain. And that's what they used to call black magic. What witches were killed for, because what did you put in my drink? I'm feeling funny, and all of a sudden I'm giving you my money.
Yeah, you couldn't have just talked me into it, could you?
Well, some could. Some could.
Exactly, right?
Yeah,
but then that had to be a spell then. Well, you couldn't just tell me to do it, but it's like, well, no, I can manipulate it. You make you into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be a spell.
Well, what do they say about Rasputin? He had the ear of the Russian queen, and through having the ear and being the spiritual advisor, because all through history there's these people that have been the spiritual advisors. So what would they do? They'd go into mesmerism, they go into seances, they do these trance induction ceremonies, and then what happens when the people with this knowledge of how to fuck with people's psychology manipulate those people? And that's why Rasputin was apparently killed, because he had the ear of the Russian queen, who has the ear of the Tsar, who can really manipulate the course of, I guess, an entire nation's direction, right? And so, yeah, the Manly P. Hall on the esoteric level talked about that. It's just the same name for a different principle. Yeah, I talked once with an established hypnotherapist from, Prince Albert, and he starts talking to me, and he's like, well, you have to realize that you can look at your consciousness and you observe your consciousness. You think about how you're observing consciousness, and you pay attention to the processes going as you're hearing my voice. And as you hear my voice, it's almost like you're in a boat and you're going down a stream, and that stream is carrying you from your conscious mind into your unconscious mind. And as you're going down into your unconscious mind, you're realizing that you're not even remembering what we're talking about anymore. And he just lets you float. And you're already starting to go into that hypnotic trance, but you're not doing that. Okay, you got to breathe. You got to relax from your head to your toe. It's just a speech pattern to fucking introduce you to an altered state of consciousness. That's some fucking sketchy stuff, because those people that know how to do it, whether it's Trump speeches or anybody who plays with those word games, they can get you to do things that you wouldn't normally want to do, especially if they start incorporating altered states through peyote, ayahuasca, psychedelics. Yeah.
Well, and it almost seems like it's less obvious but easier if you just play on fears too, instead of suggestion, just going like, no, like what are you scared of?
Fears,
that's
desires.
The thing I'll play up. Yeah. That's the thing I'll make sure that you are fixated on.
Well, what is it that Abraham Maslow had the hierarchy of human needs, and at the bottom of the human needs, people are motivated by survival. So that's where if you're going to die if you don't do this thing. That's at a very root level. And the next one is, I think it is security and safety. So you'll only be safe if you do this. The next level up is love and belonging. So you're going to be loved if you buy our toothpaste or our SUV or whatever. You know, that's going to get you sex, and that's going to allow you to fit into a social hierarchy. And only once you get past those do you get to the point where you're working on your real self-esteem and who you are before you get to the self-actualization level. So that stuff, they've been manipulating our desires and fears for a very long time. This is part of
and trying to limit access to that higher part of the pyramid, because a lot of that does come through enlightenment, which comes through education or some sort of spiritual fucking experience or an ayahuasca trip or some shit like that. But it doesn't come from just grinding.
If they can keep you at the bottom levels of the pyramid, you're never going to have the time or energy or inclination or even fucking desire to move on up, right? You know, you look at it in the cities, right? You know, you've got the beat down neighborhoods that are obviously just barely surviving. Like smashed out windows, no food, you know.
Real Russ of a neighborhood.
Yeah, fucking Russ's neighborhood. And then you got the blue collar neighborhoods where it's like, okay, I got a little bit, but I got to protect what I have. I need to work on my safety and security. Then you can move up to like the more affluent areas where we have a community. We have baseball teams. Our kids belong, you know, and like then you can move up to the nicer communities where it's like, not only that, we have a beautiful place, and it's almost like a gated area where bad elements can't get in. And then you have these places that are like, I don't know, private islands, right?
Yeah, right?
Where it's like, we can do whatever we want here
because removed off the fucking highway by a mile of driveway.
100%, you know, helicopter in or whatever it is. And like, this is our little paradise. And that's where they can do whatever they
I don't know
want.
if we talked about this last time, but like just helicoptered in, Jeff Bezos had his new yacht they were talking about. It's so fucking big that they have these 3 massive sails on it that to help move it, you know. And with it having these 3 great big masts, well, you can't really land a helicopter on it. So he has to have a secondary yacht that has a helicopter landing pad on it, so he can land his helicopter on it and then use the small yacht to get to the biggest yacht mankind's ever seen.
Interesting. Interesting.
Whee!
Yeah,
and I'm moving my grandmother into town because she could only afford the limited housing that she could get in Prince Albert, and we're trying to scramble to figure out the couple $100 a month difference so she can have a place here and not have to live in a shithole.
Exactly.
Bezos is like, I need another boat for my helicopter.
I need my helicopter yacht.
Fucking whatever. It's all fair, right?
It's all
he earned it.
Fair.
Hey, he earned it.
See, okay, so this carries. All right, this is a nice segue because one of the things I wrote down. It's a principle of the lifeboat, right? And I'm not sure if it's a lifeboat doctrine or whatever. So if you imagine, I want to ask you this question. It's kind of like a thought game, so everybody can play it at home if you're listening or watching. So there's a boat, and it's got 100 people, and it capsizes, and there's only one lifeboat with 12 people. They can only take 12 people. What would your criteria, if it was your decision, be? Who would be allowed on that boat to survive out of the 100 people, and you have to make that decision? Now I'm putting it on you. What would your criteria be? Who would be the 12 people that survive? What would you base that decision on?
If it's just blanket wise, gotta go children.
Yeah.
Whoever's the youngest of the group.
Really?
Who's
That's
got the
what you're
most
thinking?
left to live, that's who we're going to take. Plus, if there's only room for 12, I'm taking a bunch of kids. I can probably squeeze 15 or 16 in there.
Oh, you're part of it.
Well, no. I guess if I'm putting them, if somebody's going to look after these kids, if I'm leaving all the adults to die.
It's just Lord of the Flies, eh?
Yeah.
Fuck you kids, go live.
You pictured me not coming along if I have to make the decision? You're going to make me choose and I don't get to go. Well, I guess fuck all of you then. How about I shoot a hole in the boat? How about that?
Well,
How
yeah.
about that? Yeah,
Well,
no,
so-
no, you're right. Yeah. No, fucking, yeah, it'd be whoever's the youngest.
The
Send
youngest, period.
ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, youngest. Even if we're all adults, I'd still send the youngest ones.
See, I don't know. I've asked a couple people that I respect, like Jose, my partner, a couple others, and myself, because I respect myself.
I actually asked myself first and last, to be fair.
Yeah, well, literally, I'm
myself
reviewing
the most.
everybody's
Yeah.
opinions. I'm revising my answers. But Jose had like, teachers. He's like nobody over 60 and probably nobody under 10. And it would probably be teachers, educators.
Nobody under 10.
Yeah, well.
Jose's going fucking old
Right.
school. That's getting biblical, man. You're like, yeah, women and children first. No. That's not how we're doing this.
All right.
Who's
No,
got
it should-
value?
well,
Because this is the thing.
hold
though.
on.
I wasn't picturing restarting a society.
Yes. Okay.
You know
so,
what I mean? I
so
was just
imagine
picturing a
that.
boat flipping.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
okay.
We're all still existing.
You're just going to be
you know what I mean?
noble and everybody dies and the kids live.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
Yeah, if we don't have to restart things, man.
Okay.
Okay, I want a doctor. You know what I mean?
Well, that's kind of so Jose said doctors,
Yeah, fair enough.
maybe school teachers, nobody under 10, nobody over 60. And my partner, she's like, well, they'd have to. I would choose somebody who had something to give to society, whether it was like a philanthropist that would be helping people when they got back, like helping people in Africa or whatever. And me, I just kind of did it down to a principle level, and I would say, well, the strong and the noble and the healthy would be the ones that I would choose to live on,
See, you know what's funny? As soon as you started saying that, I'm like, they would stay behind. Absolutely. The strongest, the most noble would say, you guys go on without me.
They would.
We'll stay here and we'll try and swim it out.
See,
and then you're like, but they'll go on. And I'm like, oh,
See, and that's just it. That's my thing. Yeah. The noble and the strong would say, I'm willing to sacrifice myself for everybody else. You go ahead and I'm willing to die for you, which means in my opinion, they're the ones that should be saved.
Oh,
right? And
interesting.
Because everybody else like, I need to go. Okay, fine. You go ahead of me. Well, maybe that's the problem with this world. And so I kind of had the idea of like the strong and the noble and the healthy, because like, why would you save the unhealthy? Why would you save those that couldn't help themselves or had no interest in helping each other? Just a bunch of selfish, fucking sickly people on this boat. And but I'm a bit of an asshole. I'm going to own that right out. So yeah, it's kind of, but everybody I talk to, I kind of revise my stuff, and I think it's a very interesting thought experiment, who are the ones to save. Now, this carries over to the societal aspect, where there's a lot of people out there that say our ecology and our environment and our society is a sinking boat. And who are the ones that deserve to prosper and survive when nations start starving and flooding? And it's usually the billionaires that think that they get to do it.
Yeah.
We're the ones. Like
I don't think that there is... I think it's... When do they decide that they want to put the resources to fixing the problems in those areas? Because I think that there's enough resources already. If you can pipeline anything anywhere, you can get water anywhere, right? So like water shortages are not a matter of being able to move water. It's just somebody doesn't want to put the resources into it, because when there's oil there, they can move it, right? Same fucking thing.
Oh, fuck.
So, sorry, go ahead.
One of my favorite authors, Gabor Mate, talked about this with COVID. I don't want to sidetrack, but he's like, so we can get on top of vaccines for a planet within 18 months, but addiction, sickness, illness has been going on for years and he did the math because it didn't affect the economy.
Well, no, it's profitable.
Yes,
it doesn't
it's
doesn't affect it. That's what boosts it.
Well, and COVID damaged the economy,
Exactly.
so therefore it needs to be fixed now. But the human suffering, we can let that slide.
You can make money off human suffering.
Exactly.
As long as you can keep them suffering, you can continue to make money off them. If they die from it, well, then that's no fucking good.
Yeah.
Or if everybody's so scared of it, they can't go out and spend the money we need them to.
Yes.
Well, then that's no fucking good.
Yeah, taxes aren't being paid,
We need
banks
them,
aren't
we need
being
them to
good
believe
money.
that it's somebody else's problem, that addictions are just like, well, that's their choice. We need them to believe that, and then we need to continue to make money off of it. Yeah, it's kind of gross.
But so you were saying if we can pipeline anywhere, then like,
oh yeah, so shit like that, like even the idea that we're like, we don't have enough whatever to go around. We kind of do. When the Bezoses of the world have mini yachts to service their regular size yachts, we kind of do, right? It's just about then putting those resources there, and that unfortunately would probably come down to personal responsibility of like the Acons of the world deciding that he's gonna bring fucking electricity to Northern Africa. Like there is people doing it. It's just There's no mandate. There's nothing making anyone, hey, you should take your massive amount of wealth that you couldn't spend in 50 lifetimes and try and fix one of these problems that we all see. And all of us go, fuck, if I could do something, I would. But we're all stuck making $50,000 a year, barely getting by. You know what I mean? Like, it sucks, but I think that's what needs to happen. But maybe it does. Maybe a bunch of these people all have fucking ayahuasca trips and I'll go like, what the fuck am I sitting on this dragon hoard of wealth for?
Yes.
When I could start just personally funding inner city schools. I could personally fix fucking roads. I could personally.
But they won't.
Some
like
are
greed
though.
and profit. It'd be nice.
Oprah's putting up fucking schools. Akon's putting up fucking electrical fucking grids.
Yes.
You know, there's what's his name? Will.i.am puts lots back into communities. Like,
it's interesting that there's a commonality between those
they were
people.
all people that were very famous for their art.
Yes, that is it. That's the common thread between those 3 billionaires.
Too, hey? These are people that do recognize what it's like to come from a fucking malign and a
marginalized
place of
group,
not having, right? And whereas I don't know how Bezos grew up, you know what I mean? Like, I don't imagine it was in the ghetto, you know? Like,
Yeah.
So, maybe that's what just needs to happen is we need to have more fucking millionaires and billionaires that grew up not having or seeing other people around them and family not having and going, oh, no, I know what that's like first fucking hand.
See, okay, so and we can see that in the difference between those people that came up from urban backgrounds like musicians and athletes versus the tech guys that are usually, you know, middle class, upper middle class white students that got into coding and tick, and they made billions off of that versus the old money. I gave my son a measly loan of $5 million to start his empire, you know, that kind of stuff. Like, those are different classes of what we're seeing, and they're clashing, right? Like the oil,
they kind of are right now.
The oil billionaires are clashing versus the tech billionaires, and then you've got like
and they're doing it through government in a lot of ways with lobbying, with we want more control over that fucking industry, and I don't like that they're doing this, and these guys can actually push back with their big money as well.
See, unfortunately, I see everybody's still stoked on human supremacy. On our right to rule the world. And like, we need more people. All the people need to survive and fuck the environment, you know? Or like, what was it? The Georgia Guidestones. We need about, what did they say? 500 million people is the sustainable, which is interesting because I've been reading a lot on deep ecology. Yeah. And in deep ecology, they're like, about 500 million is a sustainable number of people for this planet, not 6 or 7 billion or whatever we're at. Yeah. And like, that's an unsustainable number. And the entire biosphere will die if we keep this up, because unless we acquire a radically new way of thinking. That was what Einstein said.
Or we have technology that helps balance that out. It helps balance out our load, right?
See, you know, and then there's the idea, it's maybe the technology is the problem.
Can be food. You know what? Maybe the technology of us developing less meat options, maybe that helps us shift, you know, what the biome actually looks like instead of feed crops.
It's a good point, because this stuff's on the table. You can read it on the internet, which means it's being discussed. You have to move towards biodiversity versus monocropping if you went to a plant-based stuff, because monocrop destroys soil, it destroys naturally occurring vegetation. But even then, if you take a step back from meat, then you have to solve the farming problem. If you take a step back from the farming problem, then we really have to recognize what we've done to the indigenous animals and all of, like, we talk about colonialism all the fucking time about, like,
well, you do,
yeah. As a culture,
fucking we. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Oh, and it's been heavy lately too.
Oh yeah, I wanted to get to that. Yeah. So we talk about colonialism all the time. What invading armies and invading cultures do to the indigenous cultures, but we never really consider the principle of what an invading human supremacy attitude has done to the indigenous wildlife and flora and
I think it was considered. It just wasn't of value at the time. When people are looking at it going, yeah, but it's going to kill all the ducks in the air. We did the reports. We know that leaving these tailing ponds out here is going to kill all the fucking ducks in the area. Yeah, but how many billions are we going to make next year? Okay, well, it's fine. Fuck them ducks then.
Well, really, what do the ducks do for people?
Yeah, right.
That attitude.
Can't we just move them someplace else? Why can't they go someplace else? And even that, I mean, isn't a bad option. Creating wetland in a different area that's still within their migratory path. Fucking rights, you should do that, right? But let's, you know, like, it's the core problem of this again is like, why are you worrying about dealing with tailing ponds when we should be moving away from fossil fuels in the first fucking place? We should be moving towards shit that's renewable and green. And
well, even the finding
problems.
We are so important because we need to utilize natural resources for our benefit, as opposed to being part of a grander ecosystem saying, how can we exist as part of the grander sphere. It's like, how can we manipulate everything for our benefit? And like,
right, that's been a big part of human fucking history, is like
agriculture,
trying to manipulate the shit around you to make it fit what you want, not necessarily what you're doing, and especially you like your Eastern European style, right? You know, you see European style houses built over here, and it's like, well, is that what works best? It's like, nope, it's just what we're building though.
That's where we're putting it.
That's how I knew how to do it. You're gonna fill with snow? Yep, it's gonna fuck it right up. But whatever, that's what we did back home. You know, until we figure it out. You know, we'll try and adapt a bit because you have to, but like still cling to that bullshit. And
well, you had nomadic cultures, you know, like the Bedouin down in the Middle East, or the indigenous people in Canada. It's like the weather's changing. We need to move with the weather.
Yeah.
The water's getting thin here. We need to go where there's thicker water or heavier water. You know, all of that stuff. They felt the ebb and flow of nature, and they lived within.
Yeah.
Like within.
Yeah, something's out of balance. We got to change what we're doing here so it gets back into balance, or go someplace else.
And I think about that in Saskatchewan. Like, fuck it, we're putting our stakes in. We're putting our tents up. We're building a fucking furnace. We're staying through minus 40.
Yeah.
Nature's telling us to fuck off.
Yeah.
Everything in our environment is saying, go home. Like the big scary ghost in the forest, go home. And we're like, nope.
Yeah,
We're going to sit here. We need better heaters.
Yeah.
We need underground parking. And so like the deep ecology stuff that I've been reading on a little bit is more about understanding that we are part of a grander scheme, that everything has intrinsic value in itself, and we should be respecting the boundaries of everything, right? You know, I respect your boundary. I respect my dog's boundary.
Thanks, Pat.
Yeah, I try, but I'm inherently a dominant bully little dick. So baby dink, little baby dink in here. Yeah, a dominant baby dink.
Little bully baby dink. Hey, little bully baby dink. What's going on this week?
Shut up! Do what I tell you. Yeah, exactly.
That's our little bully baby dink.
Yeah.
Shit. Well,
So-
at least you recognize it.
Yeah. Talking about colonialism, though. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, fuck, man.
This
Yeah.
last week, for those people that aren't familiar with Canadian, I don't know how far it reached. I read it in Huffington Post, so that means it's getting some fairly like internet viral stuff.
Yeah.
Kamloops. Where was it? They found a mass grave, 215 children in a residential school in Kamloops that was open from, I think, the late 1800s till 77. 215 Indigenous kids, Native kids killed off by the Catholic Church and the Canadian government, buried in a mass grave.
And that's what made it into the grave, not just what was left in the furnace.
Oh yeah, I guess yeah.
Right.
What they could get rid of, and
It's a fucking nightmare.
yeah, my girlfriend burst into tears talking about it. She's like,
man.
and those parents never had recourse to say, hey, government, hey, RCMP that stole our children and forced them into these schools. Where are our children? Because they were systematically denied access to legal counsel. They weren't allowed to hire a lawyer. They weren't allowed to
I think they
speak
shipped
the
them around
language.
the country too. Like I think it wasn't like you were picked up in Saskatchewan. Okay, well we'll see you in BC then. Like,
Oh, is that how that?
I
yeah.
don't know for a fact, but I do believe that they were moved as far away from their families as they possibly fucking could, moving them around. Well, and I mean, there's still that fucking story that's, you know, I don't know if it seems like it's been debunked, but then it still pops up every once in a while of the Queen and the fucking Prince coming out to BC and these half a dozen of the brighter kids going off into the bush with them and just never coming back.
Yeah, who knows
You
what
know?
actually
and
happened.
then this was a common occurrence that if you were a bright kid, you seemed like you were smart, you were bright, you weren't there very long. Somebody took you some fucking place and you were disappeared.
Well, they erased a culture as soon as those
fucking
kids.
gnarly.
So these kids come from a place where like there's often a matrilineal lineage where the women ran the show with the men's help. They had long hair, they had their own culture, their own traditions. They're taken, their heads are shaved, they're beaten if they speak their natural language. The reports of physical and sexual violence are off the charts.
It's the most horrific shit you've ever heard.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most horrific shit you've ever fucking heard.
Sponsored by the Canadian government and largely the
Yeah.
Catholic, I think Anglican churches, you know, and the government has kind of made this placating, oops, sorry, you know, a little bit, oops, sorry, and the Catholic Church refuses to acknowledge what happened, because if they acknowledge what happened in Canada, they have to acknowledge what they did in Australia, in South Africa, and in every other, Mexico.
Sure.
So the languages of French, English, and Spanish are all conquistador colonial languages. So if you, I speak Spanish, that's a colonial language. You speak English, that's a colonial language. Those aren't your indigenous languages.
Yeah.
So if the Catholic Church admitted, sorry, our church fucking murdered kids,
Yeah.
then we have to apologize over here and in Ireland and over here and over here and over here. and they don't want to do that because they can't sit on their thrones of gold anymore.
Well, and they were righteous when they were doing it.
Right? Yeah, they're saving the soulless.
They used to burn people at the fucking stake, and it's, we shouldn't have done that, I guess. But I mean, we were doing what we thought was right at the time.
Doing what you thought was right at the time.
No, it's well, but and I mean, none of this is news to me. It's news that it's another mass grave, but I'm like, I assumed every one of them fucking had one, and like every one of those schools, I just broke this fucking chair. Snap that arm clean off.
Fucking
I am rough on these fucking things. But it's been an eye opener for lots of people, because there were still lots of people that just denied that it was ever that bad. It couldn't have been that bad. It wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't that many people. And now you're hearing, 215 children. That hits home for a lot of people that like
in between 5 and 15 years old is when they were.
A lot of people have been brushing it off, going, "Well, it couldn't have been that bad. Not that big of a deal." And it's only going to get worse, because now I think that they're trying to do the same thing in Saskatchewan. They want to go to every residential school site,
do some excavations,
and do sonar or whatever they use.
Oh, really?
Like, or LiDAR. I can't remember what the fuck it is. They can use shit to go in there and underground check it, because I think that's actually how they found it. I don't think it was an excavation. I think it was they had some sort of equipment, and they figured
they now have the technology to be looking for mass graves.
Yeah. So I'd heard that was something that was going to be happening. So it's when it's in everybody's backyard and in your community, and you start to go, oh no, really? That was the church that we used to go to and shit like that, right? Like it's really going to fucking open a lot of people's eyes. And the one thing that I've been grateful to see is I haven't seen anybody coming out and trying to
minimize it,
virtue signal shame anybody about it. You know what I mean? Because there's some things, I see people post stuff and somebody will get on there and go, oh, isn't there anything you won't virtue signal about? Or, oh, this is another thing that you just got to get behind. I haven't seen any of that. People are being relatively respectful from the shit I've seen. If somebody posts something, nobody's getting on there going, well, I don't think it was that big of a deal. Or maybe it was blown out of proportion. Well,
this is like an atrocity. Because again,
this is black and fucking, before the numbers are there and you have the fucking mass grave, it's all just a story. And well, I don't know if it's that bad. It's like, no,
it's Saskatchewan. We get that. It's not that bad. We get so much of that in Saskatchewan.
I had a rough
and
upbringing, like my grandparents were drunks too, and it's like, you have no fucking idea how horrendous this was.
How long? Okay, so that's just it. And I've been guilty in the past too about intergenerational trauma. How long does it take to get your shit together once you've been damaged, right? How many if grandpa was fucked up, does grandchild heal? You know, how long does that chain go? So imagine you're kidnapped at the age of 6 from your family. You're forced into an environment, you don't speak the language, so they just fucking beat the shit out of you until you start trying to figure out the language. You see people getting raped around you, or you're raped yourself. You see kids getting beaten to death and going missing. And then somehow you survive this, God forbid, Auschwitz-like environment. Then you are sent home at age 18 to go start a family on a reserve that you're not allowed to leave. You don't know who is your family or who isn't your family. And you've been raised on violence and atrocity and pious religious indoctrination. And how can those chains, how can that trauma ever be healed? But you have free access to alcohol, which it reduces inhibition.
To me, I think long term, it's going to be pick a horrible thing that human beings did to each other throughout history and how it still carries weight. This is going to. You know what I mean? Like, I think if they do excavate all these graves and actually do find out the actual numbers, the hundreds of years from now, we're still going to be like, no. And you remember the Wild West days again, this isn't 100 years ago. You know what I mean? Like the last fucking one of these schools closed in like 96.
Yep. In Canada. Well, that's an interesting thing. It's funny. I don't want to out the guy, but I was having this conversation at a barbecue with a buddy of mine, and he's
you're fun at barbecues.
I am, right? I'm a wild one. Buzzkill Burke. All right, so
I brought veggie burgers. Perfect.
Yeah, you guys are drinking alcohol. You guys are consuming animal flesh. You're a colonialist. Anyways,
what are you burning in that fucking fire? Is that a tree?
Yeah, exactly. That had feelings, So he is, I think, Portuguese, and the Portuguese were some of like the crazy conquistadors, like the guys that went to like the Aztecs and like put them on like spikes, like Vlad the Impaler. Like they were lunatics. Like the Spanish conquistadors were some of like, well, at least the recordings of what they did were some of the most violent ever. And so if you Spanish-speaking countries were generally colonized by the Portuguese. That was like a big one. And so we're talking about colonialism a bit and stuff. And he's like, well, the problem in Canada is they left people alive to complain.
Jesus Christ.
Because if they would have just eliminated them, there'd be nobody left to bitch. And it would be Canada without anybody complaining. Which is interesting because you could compare it to the Indigenous genocide of the USA. There was no reservation systems. It was just the wild frontier, and we're clearing out the savages for civilization.
This was a polite genocide.
Yes,
right?
it was.
This was done under the guise of authoritarian and institutionalism, and this is the correct way to do it. That at least that's what they called it. They called it fucking what it was, right?
Yeah.
And and again, when you start, if one school 250 kids or 215, sorry, one school.
Then there's schools all over the place,
I couldn't tell you what the numbers are going to be like. It's going to be comparable to again the genocide in the American West, I think.
Well, yeah, except it was a little more systematic and quiet.
Yeah.
It wasn't crazy soldiers just going in cleaning out villages.
Yeah.
It was rounding up the children, putting them in a center. That center is like a closed off little community where whatever atrocities happened in there under the guise of religious education, bringing you to civilization. And I imagine those that were most successfully colonized got to survive, and those that were challenging to the sisters and to the Monsignor got abused to the point where they got killed. Right? Or accidents happen, like a kid gets shoved and he falls down a flight of stairs, and it looks like we killed one, because that's just it. They treated them like animals, like in a zoo. It's expendable.
Worse. The things they did to those kids, you wouldn't do to a fucking animal.
Oh, you'd be surprised. You can just go through a slaughterhouse sometime. But
well,
I don't
that's at least serves a purpose. This was just for fun. This is sadism. This was, you know what I mean? Like,
to a degree, yeah. Well, yeah, it's a
at
tough
least
one.
At the end, you're planning on eating the pig. What was the point of doing these things to these children?
They thought they were going to beat the savage out of them to make them good Canadian citizens. At least that's what they had on paper. But that being said, I want to know what it is about certain religious orders that create such malignant manifestations of psychological deviance, right? I'm thinking it could be the celibacy and the sin and the guilt, the emphasis on celibacy, sin, and guilt, that things become malignant the more you try to suppress them. And that's why these priests that are never allowed to have sex, never allowed to masturbate, never allowed to marry without having this guilt put on them, this ridiculous amount of guilt, turn it malignantly and start finding the loopholes to sin. Right? If I molest a little boy's asshole.
That's exactly what they're doing. That's exactly what they're doing, is they're finding the loopholes to sin.
Yeah.
Fucking rights.
And then they get to play the game. It's like, well, I was tempted. I did something out of line, and I'm so sorry now. Give me my last rites and I'll go to heaven. Like, you guys are living some fucked up worlds, right? And it seems to be the most religiously pious people that do the most atrocious shit, as opposed to like lowbrow scumbags who generally, we might have some hiccups, but we're on a pretty straight, boat. We don't fuck around that much, right? Yeah, it's some pretty weird stuff. Yeah, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think these fucking lunatics that were in charge of children, and like that's just it. They were running a concentration camp of helpless little rabbits, right? And they could do whatever they want to the rabbits.
Brutal.
Anyway, so
But the conversation will keep happening now. You know what I mean? And that's good. Everybody gets uncomfortable about it, and but fucking just acknowledge it, for Christ's sakes. I think that's the biggest issue with a lot of this stuff, is when people keep denying it and denying the level of it.
Take the opportunity to educate yourself about what happened to the Indigenous people in Canada, and then you can recognize that we live in a two-tier society. There's two classes in our society, and we live in an unspoken apartheid. You can go to stores and watch the people's attitudes change when an Indigenous person walks into the store, like the employees. It's
for sure, man. Well, I got a buddy. He's from the East Coast, and he honestly couldn't believe how racist it was in this province.
Oh yeah.
When he got out here, because I frequently date native girls. He's like, it's kind of my thing, And he's like, I got out here and lots of white guys kept asking me like, well, why are you dating her? And he's like, what the fuck do you mean? Why am I dating her? And they're like, well, And he's like, no, I don't. What the fuck are you talking about? Like he hadn't seen it out there, And the Mississippi of the North, like we've said before.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal.
It's getting better, right? Maybe it's getting better. Maybe more people are becoming fucking enlightened and not being dickheads and
I don't know.
Having conversations. I just feel like even that I didn't see a bunch of negative bullshit backlash on my Facebook feed for this. I'm kind of like, that was like, oh, well, maybe that's a first step. Maybe this is one of those watershed moments where people that normally would shit talk about this are going, fuck.
Yeah.
No, that's too much. It's just too much for me. Because actually, this is a little off topic. I'm just thinking of like these moments where it kind of changes your perception. I watch Morning Joe every once in a while. It was kind of a right-leaning morning talk show kind of thing on MSNBC. The guy that runs it, Joe Scarborough, he used to be a Republican congressman, I believe, or senator, congressman, I thought. Anyways, and his co-host Mika Brzezinski, her old man was a politician, and like, so, you know, they're kind of like in on this fucking thing, right? They know what the fuck's going on with it, and he's quite right leaning. So listening to him, I would get kind of the more that right perspective, but it's not the crazy QAnon right. It's what a Reaganomics conservative.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's center right.
That's what this guy, you know, thinks like. Well, he said like he's given up his membership to the Republican Party just because of how things went with Trump, and he's been very vocal about it. And he said,
I can absolutely respect conservatives like that,
because he's like, this isn't my party anymore.
A rational, moral individual.
These aren't things that I would want to perpetuate. And so he said with his father, he saw it with Nixon, because his old man was a staunch Nixon supporter. Like, he was like, no, Nixon didn't do it. He's the president. We got to respect him. There's no way Watergate wasn't as bad as what they say it was. It wasn't all that, blah, 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 blah. Then finally it comes out that they've got the tapes, and they've got the tapes of him saying what he wants done. And that day that he read that in the paper, he was just like, fuck, that was it. He did do it, didn't he? So this was someone who would never, ever, ever, ever go against Nixon. There's no way he didn't do it. And then finally he's seen the thing that he's like, fuck, it's on tape.
I can't deny it anymore.
He did the crime. I can't. I just can't fucking do that. I'd have to be delusional to continue. And it wasn't easy for him, but he still was like, I can do it. And he says there's still going to be more people that are going to get there. It's just going to take longer and be harder for them with Trump when they get to the point where they realize they were just lied to the whole time.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that this 215 kids, that's one of these kind of moments for a lot of people, again, like we said, that we're not necessarily even denying it, but not really accepting the weight of what this is. And now they're going, holy fucking in numbers. And I mean, people, you know, fair or not, have been making the comparison to the Humboldt Broncos players, you know, a few years ago, you know, the national outcry for that.
Yeah, there were 16 young men that died in a car accident.
Yeah, absolute fucking tragedy. You know,
and they got millions of dollars donated to them. They've got a international outcry because they were a hockey team.
All should. You have a fucking tragedy like that involving kids. Abso-fucking-lutely.
Where is the outcry for the 215?
Well, and I think,
well, not just 215.
I think it's been more of a
thousands.
trickle. It hasn't been instantaneous because I think a lot of people don't know how to handle it. It's such a heavy thing where you're like, how do I even, you know? And I think it's starting to build a little bit. There's starting to be more, like you said, different governments and communities even going like, no, we have to recognize this. The orange shirt days at schools, even shit like that is like, you know, that isn't something we had when I was a kid in school. So, you know, so I think it's all getting so people at least won't fucking forget and are starting to understand the weight of it, I hope.
Well, I think it's very important, and because that's the truth and reconciliation is understanding what actually happened. Like, the Indigenous people know the truth.
Yeah.
But the settler community, for whatever color, you know, let's just for sake of argument say like the Euro settlers don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear that truth because it's an inconvenient truth.
Well, and then it starts to feel like you have to take some blame for it or something, right?
Blame, I think, ownership, recognizing, and saying,
and that's
what
people feel, right? And they don't want to do that. Well, I don't know that. That's not me. I didn't do it. It wasn't my grandparents. But it's like, yeah, okay, cool. But you don't really. Nobody's going to really punish you for it. You just have to go, no, this happened, and it was terrible, and you know, I accept it. Like, instead of the denial, the minimalization, the fucking, you know, like. You don't even have to necessarily go march. You don't have to fucking, you know, to paint your Facebook page orange. You just have to fucking stop denying that it happened and stop being shitty about it.
Say, holy shit, you know, I guess I got to this position through a lot of privilege, and, you know, I'm going to do what I can to fucking open up my mind for these other people.
Right.
You know, that's a great thing. Consider with your heart what it would happen if it was your family, empathy, and all of that, right? So, there's this series, or there's this saying, I guess, hurt people, damage people, damage people. Mm-hmm. And we can look at, like, trauma, people that cause trauma in a lot of ways. It's an accidental thing. It's the only, like, let's say my dad had poor coping skills. Some dads have really poor coping skills, and they act in the only way that they were taught how to act, and they act shitty. So therefore, they train their kids to be shitty. And those kids can try and work on themselves, but they're only going to be as good as the skills that they're given. So when you get to a point where you recognize that those that traumatized you, yeah, they were hurt too. They were hurt too, and hurt people. So that's the root of forgiveness, right? But then you got to consider what I would consider what real evil is, and those people that would put their selfishness before the basic needs of others.
Wow, and these are established. They built a whole structure to hide these monsters within, moving them from one parish to another.
And they're still
there,
doing
there was
that,
one
yeah.
priest that they'd recently come out over 500 boys he'd molested during his career, and they had a plane that he would fly to all these different northern communities. So he's jet setting around the fucking country, doing whatever he fucking pleases. You know,
Yeah, just being a degenerate.
That's not. I lashed out and my programming made me do that, or it's something I'm working through. Well, that's a systematic abuse of a system that for pure evil. There's no fucking justification at that point.
There's no, I slipped and I made a mistake
kids,
and I feel guilty.
right?
Yeah, it's like you're a systematic monster.
Yeah.
And that's what I would consider when a person makes the choice to go from, oops, I made a mistake, or oops, I fucked up and I got in a fight, my skills suck and I need to work on my skills, to I am a monster. The difference between somebody who gets in fights and becomes a serial killer, the guy who has a Me Too accident, and the guy who becomes a systematic rapist. That's like the crossing a line to being a monster, right? And I wonder about my journey towards forgiveness and empathy and all of that stuff, how much I have to care about people that don't care about other people, and how much I have to show love and empathy for those people that are completely devoid of love and empathy themselves. This really got put on my table when my aunt was murdered, and she was left in a dumpster over $20 of crack, right? The guy that murdered her was a child rapist, and he had just gotten out of jail, and he strangled my aunt and disposed of her body in the most like disgusting way you can, treated her like garbage, left her in a dumpster. He laughed at our family in the courtroom. Zero guilt. And his lawyer is like, oh, he's got FAS and schizophrenia and all these reasons why he should have a minimal sentence. So he got 15 to life, right? And then when he got to jail, he escaped and murdered a guy. So he's got 2 murders under his belt, and he's a child rapist. How much empathy do I need to have in my heart? And I consider myself a compassionate individual for somebody who really is no longer even a person. They've allowed themselves to become a monster. Yeah. Or systems, right? Systems and structures that are based on that idea. Like, look at the Catholic Church is based off of this fucking, they're on mountains of gold, mountains of stolen knowledge, mountains of stolen wealth. They could just say, hey, we're giving it back. We recognize the error of our ways. But no, they got so much invested in their power and profit and influence, they don't want to do it. So I'm really up in the air how much I need to give a shit about people that don't give a shit about other people. You know, on a small scale or large scale. The guy walking down the street that punches an old lady just out of spite, you really don't care? Do I have to care if you get hit by a car? Or can I just walk away?
Don't.
Right?
You know what I mean?
Right?
And you don't really, because I mean, it comes down to interaction. I mean, if you don't ever have to physically in the world do anything to help or hurt those people, as far as it's just having an opinion about the things that happen, you feel no empathy for the ones you want. And then it comes down to, you know, if you actually had physical.
Okay, what about capital punishment?
That's exactly right. Pick something that you would actually need to be involved in. Now, where's your level of empathy, right? You know, that same guy. You know, like he's drowning. You know, and you could save him. You're there physically. Now, that becomes a fucking question, right? Because if he's just doing it on his own and he drowned and you weren't there and you couldn't do nothing about it, you can not give 2 fucks about it, right? But if you're there and you could have, now it's, do I still give 2 fucks about this guy and I just let him fucking struggle? And me in that situation, I'm going to say right now, yes, I do, unfortunately. If I know who it is and I know what their life has been and I see them out there, I didn't put them there. This is your journey. I could pull you out of it. I think I'm going to let you figure it out, bud. Yeah. And maybe you sink to the bottom, I guess.
Well, what if you're that noble person that says, okay, no, here you go. I'm going to help you. And then they go out and they pull off whatever monstrous shit they were going to do anyways. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because like this guy killed my aunt and I'm looking at him like, you know what? Maybe his life was that fucked up, that he's a fucked up individual because of it. Now he's in jail. He's going to work on his shit. Who knows? Hope. He works on his stuff and he becomes a better person. And maybe in some ways, this atrocities that he's done have been for his betterment as a human being. Yeah. And then he escapes and murders a guy for a car.
Right.
And I'm like, that guy's a fucking monster.
Yeah.
In my mind, he forfeited his right for the government, for taxpayers to keep him alive anymore. And I got in a debate with these guys online about capital punishment. I'm like, I kind of think if I'm paying if our government's paying $150,000 to $200,000 to keep a guy alive like that a year, how many guys are we keeping alive like that when we could just say 30-cent bullet? There you go. That is done. You forfeited your existence, right? But these people were very left-leaning, and they're like, to kill a killer, you become a killer, and you're just wanting revenge, and there's no reason that anybody ever needs to be murdered. I'm like, I don't think you've ever touched atrocity. I think you're coming from a crazy vantage point of privilege if you think that there is nothing that anybody ever forfeits their existence for. You know what I mean? I do. Like, you know, that priest who's going around and going ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
How many does it take
Right.
for you just to say, guess what? Your light gets extinguished like a candle. You once upon a time had this like...
Yeah, you've considered to be a fucking cancer. When do you get removed?
Yeah, exactly. Poof.
Yeah.
There, your candle's out. You aren't allowed to do that to the... If a dog bites too many people, it's put down as being a dangerous animal, and we can justify that till the cows come home because it's just a dog. But for some reason, we've got this attitude that people are this, you know, noble thing that needs to be forgiven, and I don't buy it. I'm having a harder and harder time when I hear shit like this. Right?
Well, but then every redemption story there is where someone does, you know, find the light and come to the fucking regret their ways and get better, always gives you that hope that it can happen, right? And I mean, I'm sure it's not the norm. But it's tough. It's a tough fucking line to walk. I've always had conflicting views about, you know, capital punishment, for example. I've always thought it's a very biblical solution to a modern problem.
It's punishment.
So
it's
I'm
punishment.
like, so to me, I'm like, well, then it should be some biblical level shit. Then, you know what I mean? Like, if that's what we're gonna do, then it should be those affected by this decide the outcome of that. Right? If it's the friends and family of the person who was murdered or whatever who was wronged, you know, and you decide this is what you need to do, and fucking okay, then that's the balance of this, I guess, because it was between you. You know what I mean? But when the government is like, well, no, we've decided that this is who gets it and this doesn't, and this one jumped through the right amount of hoops, so he doesn't have to get on death row, even though we know he should probably be there. But his lawyers were crafty enough and whatever.
Bureaucracy.
Use this system. Yeah, exactly. Right. I think you cut all that out of there. If that's what you want to do and you want to go caveman style biblical, then make it caveman style biblical. Then the families get to decide. They stone him to death in the fucking park or whatever the fuck it is you want to do. You know what I mean? That's up to them. I'm not even part of that process. You know what I mean?
Part of me, it's like the Soviet era, they would reuse their nooses. You get found guilty, you walk out the courtroom, boop, 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 up the stairs, into the noose, boom, it's done. There's not even a holding cell once you get a death sentence, right?
But then again, then that's just a system of punishment, right? There's no rehabilitation in that.
So, okay, what kind of rehabilitation would have to happen for a monster like that priest, the jet-setting priest?
There may be none.
Right?
There may be none. You know what I mean? And then but then my head goes to then like, well, keep him in a goddamn cage and study him. Figure out how the fuck you stop these sort of things from continuing to happen. How do you identify what happened with them when they were kids that put them on this fucking path? Or you know,
and I think they've done that enough that they know now.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, there's always something new to learn. That's my whole thing about it, right? Is like it's like you can learn, and you might see the same thing for the next 100 versions of that fucking thing, right? And that could really fine tune it. But then maybe you're not seeing them anymore because shouldn't that be the point? If we keep studying to figure out how to stop it, eventually the studying is going to lead to stopping it, right? And then we don't have to get to that. Ideally.
Well, yeah, exactly. But being able to treat trauma would be a really good one.
We don't work in a linear fashion. We don't develop in a straight fucking line.
And hindsight's 20/20.
Yep.
You know, we can see what we've done and or see what's happened already, and like, oh, if I was there, I would have done this. Well, fuck you, you weren't there.
Yeah.
You know, and well, my girlfriend's got a really good point that if you were in the other person's shoes legitimately, you wouldn't have your vantage point to say I woulda, I coulda, I shoulda. You would be exactly doing the things they did because you would be in their brain. You would make the exact same choices, so you can't really judge where they're at because you're judging from your vantage point.
You're doing what you would do. You can't do what they would do.
Oh fuck yeah, it's
that's heavy. A bit of a mind fuck, right? Too though. To think about that because that's what I think that's what I do is I why the fuck would you do that? I think of somebody doing something and I'm like, because I would never do that. And I'm like, well, that's because I'm fucking not them.
Yeah,
I'm not them. I'm not doing their life. So I guess that's why they park like that.
Well, it's the same thing with our Dragon Slayer, our recovery program, right? Where we're like, look, this is the program that we like. Now, it may not work for you, but it works for us. But I have to keep that in mind that there's a very specific personality that program works for. And, you know, the peace-loving granola types may not like that warrior archetype energy of fighting against your dragons, right?
Sure.
As opposed to heal your dragons, right? Because if you get into that fighting mentality, sooner or later you have to fight against the fight in you, right? And you have to get to that forgiveness and peace and healing. But in the meantime, if you're balls deep in addiction, sometimes you need to have a fire lit under you to fight it off, right?
Sure.
So that's something that's been on my mind a lot is like how much to care about those people that just don't give a shit. How much do you need to reach down and help somebody up who's like, fuck it, I don't give a fuck, right? I don't want the help.
Yeah.
Do you walk away? You know? And then like that thing about you're only at the vantage point that you're at, you know, like my girlfriend said, you know, if you're in somebody's shoes, you would have the exact same decisions. All I can really try and say is plant a seed that maybe they hadn't considered before, and just leave it there. If it grows, it grows, and if it doesn't, it doesn't.
Even your seed planting.
Seed planting, yeah, Johnny Appleseed.
Right. Johnny Appleseed.
So you got new Vans.
Yeah, I got some
On a
new
lighter
kicks.
note,
Yeah. Bought some new kicks and got a fucking new skateboard all set up. Like the first time I bought a whole new fucking everything in one shot. I've always been like, I've had the same set of trucks for like 15 years, you know, like, so I just upgrade some shit, eh? So I'm very fucking stoked on it. It's been very fun riding it around, and again, making me feel like a pile of shit, but it's good because the more I get out and do it, the better it's going to be.
I thought it was a great idea to take my Vans when we went to Japan, and I didn't realize we were going to be doing a lot of walking tours, like all through Osaka and then up the hills of Kyoto and like all over the place. And it was very quick before I went into a Japanese shoe store and got a pair of like cushy Adidas. You know, Vans are not long-term walking shoes. They're styling, but you feel the ground.
Well, and that's I bought these ones specifically to skate in because I do have another pair of Adidas that I like for regular wearing around because they get a little thicker sole on them. But yeah, I'd never had Vans for skating before, and I was like, well, that's kind of like the quintessential skate shoe. I gotta fucking try them out at least. Yeah. And I was stoked on these because they're kind of nice and light, but they got a little bit of arch support in them, a little bit of heel cushion, and just enough.
Well, I think the Vans is that 70s style where you can literally feel the board under you. You know, even if you had the bolts that came up, you could actually feel those bolts. While a lot of there's that trend in skate shoes to get bigger and poofier and bigger and poofier. You almost look like an anime character. You know, your feet are so big, and you got these
the DCs and DVSs of like the early 2000s.
They're pretty ridiculous.
Yeah. And loved them. Great big
really?
collars on them. Thick. Oh, the thicker the better.
Oh man, the tongues that are as thick as they are wide. You know, I rocked DCs for a long time, but I'm getting back to Doc Martens.
Better for stomping.
Yeah. I don't even want to go there. Pull up some to Falling Down, Michael Douglas quotes.
Fuck, I was just watching the scene from when he's in the burger shop the other day. It popped up on my fucking feed. I was like, oh, this is a fun little 6-minute chunk.
Well, I love that movie. It was pivotal to me for many, many years. I could relate so much to that guy. He was just a furious guy that like the society is all fucked up and there's nothing you can do about it. And then I read probably 3 months ago a critique, which essentially and honestly was pretty accurate, that said this is the, I guess, swan song of white male privilege in America.
Sure.
And I'm like, what the fuck are they talking about? This movie's fucking great. And then we looked at it, or they looked at it, like he goes into a Korean grocery store and he's mad at inflation and he gets ragey and gets in a violent altercation with a guy kind of racist-y, you know? And then he runs into some guys in the hood and he gets in another racial kind of heated, you know, interaction with them and gets in a fight and they try and drive by and he gets in another, you know, racial kind of interaction, runs into some homeless guys, gets into it with like, and it's just the working class white man, keep America great again, who's just fucking furious at the culture he's living in. And I'm like,
being attacked by everything.
Yes.
And he's the guy with the bag of fucking machine guns.
Well, but he's getting them from the bad guys each time. You know, oh man, I love that show. But so yeah, but it puts stuff in context for me. This is a guy who feels that his country is going down the drain, and that's sort of like Boondock Saints is another one, right? Where do you ever listen to Finn McKinney? He's like a YouTube guy. He does a lot of hardcore videos, or he critiques music. He had he's also in Instagram. I think it's Finn McKinney or something like that. And he had a question. He's like, so why is it that Boondock Saints is the movie for 90s hardcore kids? What is it about Boondock Saints that makes everybody from the 90s hardcore scene want to wear English cab drivers' caps and get like, you know, all these like Irish tattoos? And most people were like, probably because it's Boston hardcore and it's angry white boys, you know? Yeah, so I guess
fair enough, yeah.
Boondock Saints is definitely the angry white boy movie. Yeah.
When I always think of angry white boy movies, Romper Stomper.
Well, yeah, that's a very white boy movie.
That's the angry white boy movie that I think of.
See, and that's Romper Stompers was really strange because it was pretty ambiguous. Like they were sort of like the anti-hero protagonists,
kind of, but still garbage.
Yeah, they were assholes. Yeah. They were racist. They were violent. But you ended up picking the less of the racist asshole violent guys
Kinda
to be
rooting
your
for
hero.
them, yeah.
Yeah, you know, like they made the heroes, the bad guys were the heroes, which is kind of an interesting premise. But
well, that's been the story of my life. Like the new deck I just bought is an anti-hero skateboards deck. You know, like the anti-hero has always been my fucking choice. Comic book characters. If you were the guy who reluctantly did the right thing, you know, like fucking Bruce Campbell in everything he's ever been. You know, like the reluctant anti-hero is my favorite.
Or American History X would be another one where it's like the bad guy, you kind of relate to him. Then
He's even got a little bit more of a redemption kind of angle where he's a really fucking bad guy, like so bad you hate. He's evil, and then he has that redemption. I'm still picturing the guys who are ever like, you're never fully evil. You just like you'll take a pocket full of stuff when you're not supposed to. You know, when all the good guys are leaving, like the fucking Deadpools of the world. You know, like I'm kind of a good guy, I guess. You know, if you need
an
one
opportunist,
right now, yeah,
an opportunist.
That's always what I've
evil.
gravitated towards. Yeah.
I really think that the principle of evil is when you will impose your will on something whether or not it wants it.
Yeah.
You know, you're taking this, whether you like it or not, and on whatever level it is, whether you're stealing something from somebody that can't stop you, whether you're imposing like physical violence on somebody that can't stop you, which,
Making them listen to your podcast.
making them listen, like, you know, Clockwork Orange style. Dusty just fell right the fuck out of his chair. For those of us just listening, Dusty just ate shit on the floor.
Total distraction.
Do you want to grab that chair from over there? Yeah.
The cultivating mass.
I've been doing a lot of bulking. I'm not sure if that's evident to you.
They don't make these chairs for full-figured girls. Like all the parts blew off.
Here, slide it underneath here.
Well, I've never seen one so fully destroyed like that. Yeah, perfect.
Motherfucker. So Dusty's going to stand for the remainder of this podcast. No.
Get my squat on. Holy fuck. Unreal. I don't even want to sit down. Actually, it feels nice to stand. There we go. Great.
So yeah, like the principle of evil, imposing your will on that chair, whether.
Sorry, you were saying?
Yeah, right. But that's so. Even in American History X, he's a fucking misguided, angry, hurt young man who's doing stupid shit. But I wouldn't even, aside from when he murdered the dudes, right? Like up to that point, he wasn't really fucking evil. But the point of like curb stomping somebody who's already fucking down and out, and then you drag him and you fucking murder him, that's evil.
Yeah.
It's evil. It's unnecessary. You're just imposing your will on a helpless fucking thing. I carry this principle over to, you know, animal torturers and stuff like that. You know, it's unnecessary. And unfortunately, I think it's more common in our society than we give it credit for. You know, we really have a lot of wants. Well, they're not needs, wants that are based off the exploitation of those that just don't have a choice, right? Whether it's slave labor.
Almost everything you fucking enjoy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Pick a thing you enjoy eating or doing or seeing, and
my favorite,
somebody somewhere's getting fucking exploited.
Punk rock tattoo shirt, which was ethically printed by a punk rock tattoo printing company, but this shirt was made by fucking slave labor in Indonesia. I almost guarantee you.
You got the ink on it from something ethically.
Yeah, or who knows who made the ink, like where that comes from.
And where does that go? Does it go back in the fucking environment?
Yeah, so we're living in a culture of exploitation, and it really makes me wonder how to step out of it. Like, and that's the thing, but it's not, like, being ignorant isn't, but when you know what you're doing is fucking wrong, but you do it anyway. Yeah. And that's, I think, where you're crossing that line. And if you make a habit of it because you're strong enough, big enough, might makes right, then that's when we would think that society is more civilized than that. But might makes right, where the billionaires can make laws that keep them billionaires and to keep everybody else poor. So in the economic system, might still makes right.
Mm-hmm. Well, and for now. Because it gets to be that fucking, everybody who's grasping at fucking power, they end up fucking it up at some point, and they didn't get there legitimately, and they all get their fucking comeuppance at one point.
I don't know.
I think there's a cosmic balance to the universe. It might not even happen in this go-around if you believe in fucking reincarnation, though, but...
I think we got like 6,000 years of history that says otherwise, that those in power tend to keep power and keep those people without power.
Well, they've frequently and violently had it taken from them. You think
just for another power monger
for
to
sure,
come
but
into
that's
place.
That's the cycle, right? It's again, crave the power, get the power, have the power. How do I keep the power? Oh shit, somebody's taking it from me. Somebody else has got it now. Crave the power, get the power, keep the power. How do I fucking